With me, Josh Ashcroft from Ross Video. How you doing, Josh?
Good. How are you?
Man, welcome to the studio.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. Yeah.
Well, today we're going to be talking about some really cool products from Ross Video, or one cool product that I'm really excited about. And when you and I were talking about this earlier, it kind of reminded me about just how much has changed in my career. So dating myself a little bit, I've been doing this now for 30 years. And when I started in the business, prior to that, 50 years earlier, the only big upgrade in technology was like going from black and white to color. Okay, pretty simple, not a lot of changes. Everything was kind of always done the same way, but ever since then, you know, we've gone from analog to digital to 16 by 9, HD, 3G, IP, NDI, you name it. We even had a little time where we tried to do 3D, but anyway, we won't talk about that. But, the thing about it is, just in the last 30 years, we have gone through so many changes. And I would think that if, I was someone that was building a new system and, you're thinking, well, I really only kind of need just a basic baseband system, right? But if I go and spend all this money, is it going to be out of date tomorrow or next year? Or what's going to be debuted at NAB, And so it's like, people, I think, are concerned about not only, hey, what's the future going to hold? What's the next format du jour? But what about all these other things? What about my NDI cameras? What about my baseband system? What about all these other things? 2110, everybody's talking about. So the question is, which is the right one? And I think the answer is all of them.
Yeah, that's true. So as we've moved into the future, as we've seen, all the technology rapidly grow and expand, and we've received all these different options as we've moved into the 21st century with things like FPGAs, and we moved away from like discrete chips. A lot of new formats have appeared on like the market, and generally we've seen those kind of segmented into different areas, right? So we'll see like things like SDI and 2110 in more of a tier one application, things like your news, like things sports. Then you have other things like NDI that might sit in, more of like the prosumer or the corporate AV space. And then you have these other formats like JXS and like SRT and H.264 that sit kind of in the middle of all that. And now we're kind of in a situation in the industry right now where we're starting to see kind of all those converge. So we're not really seeing that, like certain verticals like certain formats. We're kind of seeing that all the verticals like all the formats, right? We're seeing 2110 inside corporate. We're starting to see NDI inside of tier one. We're starting to see all these different things. So it really helps to have tools and platform and equipment that can address all those needs. That if you're putting your design system for churches, or your design system for like small corporations or even large corporations or tier one broadcast or sports stadiums, to know that like, hey, here's a set of equipment that can actually fit this application, and I can do whatever I need to do. And, if needs change, if all of a sudden we need like different formats, or we need, more of one format and less of the other, we don't have to necessarily redesign our entire system. We can kind of subtly modify the parts that we need to modify, and then still be able to, get our shows on air, like in our production, like targets, and like really reduce the amount, like downtime and work it takes to actually get systems modified, if that's what.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, there's a tool to do all of this.
Great problem.
We haven't even announced that in this video, but it's the Ultrix.
Yeah.
Ultrix Carbonite. If you want to incorporate the switcher and thing in there too, which again, my first reaction when I saw this, and we got some great video of what it looks like and everything, but it's just modularity. Is that a word? Modularity? Can you say that? Yeah, modularity. Ross has already for a while been incorporating routing with switching and everything, and this is sort of a continuation on that. And so, sometimes we think about open gear frames. Open gear, you can just slide whatever you want in there. This is not that, right? This is an all-in-one solution.
Yeah.
I think you call it a platform.
I would call it, that's exactly right. It's a platform, because there's so many things we can do with this platform. So for example, if I need a router, you can route, right? It starts off as a router. The platform starts as a router, right? I need to route my signals in and out. If I have an open gear frame that usually is plugging into a router, and I'm sending signals, to a card to be converted into something else or to get processed, and sending it back to the router, potentially. This, like we start like with the router, but on top of that router, we can do so much more with it.
You know, Josh, a lot of our customers are really at different places. Some people are just at a really simple, basic thing, and they know that in the long term, they're not going to really grow huge, right? But they just want to keep up to date with the technology. There's others that might be there that just say, hey, we are growing fast and we need the space to be able to grow into that. Other people are like, hey, we're kind of a big deal and we got a lot going on and we need the most horsepower you can get. And the great thing is that you have multiple frames to kind of fit all of those scenarios, all from 1 unit to 12, right? Can you just quickly tell us about those?
This is the Ultrix platform configuration tool. You can get to it at ultrix.rossvideo.com. And this, we spend a lot of time and effort to make sure this tool is updated with new products, that all the rules are in place on what you can and can't do with the Ultrix and how certain different configurations can affect the other configurations. This is a great tool to figure out what Ultrix can do without actually having an Ultrix in front of you, right? Which is great, especially if you're getting ready to buy your first Ultrix, right? So here I can say I want to create a new Ultrix system, and this gives all the different frame sizes we have available. So we have 4 different frame sizes that Ultrix fits into. The first one, our smallest option, is the Ultrix FR1. So this is going to give us a max matrix size of 36 by 36.
Okay.
We can step up into the FR2, which will give us 72 by 72. And we can step up bigger than that into the FR5, which is 160 squared. And then we can step all the way up to a 288 by 288 frame size, which is the FR12, which is our newest member of the family. And if you need something even bigger than that, we can leverage 2110 and our Ultracore BCS to take all different sizes of Ultrix frames and combine them together into one single unit to fit whatever actual IO size you actually need, with all the other great features that Ultrix provides, with multi-viewer switchers, audio routing, proc amps, and all that stuff.
So no matter where you are today or where you're going to grow in the future, you got a frame to have it covered.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, well, we'll jump back in there. So let's say we need an FR12.
Yeah,
let's start configuring.
It's a new FR12. So like this tool, there's a handful of IO cards. So I'm just going to start with the actual Ultrix IO cards. For example, I'm just going to add one of each. We'll talk about these SDPEs,
and that opens up submenus based on your choices. Okay, very cool.
Yeah. So here I have it. Like it's added a couple of IO cards here. So the first one here, the most common one is the HDX IO card. So I've been so far in this conversation, I've tried to be careful by saying the word signal instead of SDI, because SDI could be one of those signals that Ultrix accepts, but we could also accept all kinds of other signals, as we'll see as we move through all these other cards. So this card has 16 by 16 fixed. It's pretty simple in that regard. But like all of our other cards, there's this section off to the side, this aux section. In this aux section, I can either add more SDI IO, right? A and B can have actual IO, that's fiber or SDI that's coming into it, or it could also be MADI, right? So I could add 2 MADI streams to aux A and B and get 128 channels into the frame via this card. And that's like that in Dante, which comes in an aux C right here, right? If I open up my SFP configuration, I can say I want to load this with, like, say, for example, like a MADI coax SFP, and this one could be MADI coax SFP here.
Well, my favorite thing on this so far is the graphical represents. I mean, you literally get to see the IO card populate.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. And I'm a visual guy, right? So like I can fill out a spreadsheet, but actually seeing the card, it just makes a little more sense to me. So
yeah, I'm the same way. When I go to trade shows or if I'm looking at gear, I care way more about what the back of that gear looks like than the front of it. The front is cool, whatever, but I want to see where things are plugged in at, all that, like how the layout is. That's
such a great feature.
Yeah. So so here, like I might want to add some MADI here. So I have all these different MADI options, like whether like my MADI is fiber or if it's coax, whether it's single mode or multi-mode. I'm going to say it's going to be coax here. I might add my Dante port here. Come out here and add my Dante license. And I can kind of build this card to be what I need to be. But the thing, especially with audio here, is like while that audio is coming in and out of that particular card, it's not just restricted to that card when I look at it from the overall frames perspective. So that audio could access any of the SDI ports or any of the NDI ports or 2110 ports or whatever in the frame.
If I can jump in, one of the things that I think is that stands out about doing it this way, where we have significantly less additional outboard gear, is that we're putting all of this into one box. So you're not only going to be saving real estate, but you're also being very economical when it comes to power consumption, heat, rack management, it's very much a even environmentally friendly solution as of because what you're talking about now, in the past has always been racks or multiple racks gear to be able to make all these things happen and tie together. But now this one box,
this one box,
essentially doing it all.
Yeah, I could do a system in a box with this one, right? So it doesn't matter what type of signals my system is using. I could really have a system in a box, right? And speaking of other signals, there's, we've talked about this SFP sum module, but there's also too like an SDI module, right? So if I need to fill this card with one type of signal, but I don't want to lose the potential other SDI needs, I can fill this out with this SDI sum module. The NDI module, so if I have NDI gear, I can bring NDI directly into the frame or send NDI directly out of the frame. I don't have to have a bunch of converters within my rack, either in open gear frames or zip tied to shelves or in some sort of rack mount unit. I can bring the signal directly into the frame, this 4x4, and I can land potentially 4 NDI sub modules here and have 16x16 NDI just on this one card.
And if you're an existing baseband system and you want to get a little bit more robust infrastructure and you want to go to this frame, you can go ahead and start with the baseband SDI cards. But next year or the next budget cycle or whenever, you might want to incorporate some NDI gear or even start bringing in a hybrid S2110 or whatever, a signal, whatever the signal is.
Absolutely.
You don't have to worry about that today. You build it out for what you need today, but you have the slots and the modularity. And again, I'm assuming Ross is going to continue to be on top of whatever the technology is so that 5 years from now, when the next big thing shows up, they'll have a way to incorporate that signals right into your Ultrix Carbonite.
That's exactly right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and like that's one of the things we did with the DisplayPort module that we announced at NAB in 2025, which at the time of this recording is the most recent NAB that we've had. But it's this NDI a DisplayPort module, right? So like we see, especially in sports and live events, we see a lot of DisplayPort that's feeding outboard LED processors that don't necessarily handle SDI as well as they could, or as well as they can handle it. A DisplayPort. So we have the ability to handle the SDI conversion to like a DisplayPort. But one of the big things that typically catches us all off guard is we're talking about a difference in color space, right? In SDI world, we live inside the YCBCR space. Whereas in things like high res and LED, they like to work with RGB, things like 444. And this card handles that conversion seamlessly. Wow. So we can process the color space in its native SDI like space, on the back plane of the router, but we'll hand that back off to the DisplayPort. All that conversion is like it's being handled. All the EDIN information is being handled like the way it should be, and we have this clean handoff between one domain and then the next domain.
It's all configured with the universal language of Rust, which is the dashboard, right?
Dashboard.
Yes, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But give us some of the other. We talked about multi-viewers and things, the Ultrascape. What are the other things that we can start adding into this frame in the configurator?
The only card that we haven't talked about yet is the IPX card. This is very similar to like the rest of the cards that we've already talked about. But it just gives us the ability to do 2110 in and out of the frame. Okay. So now, earlier we didn't call this a router. We call this a platform, right? Because it can do all this other stuff that isn't just routing. And we've already kind of touched a little bit on it, in terms of the difference. All the different IOs we can bring in, as well as all the things like audio and stuff like that. But part of the cleverness of Ultrix is the power of the frame comes with the actual IO cards themselves. So if I look at this HDX card, look at the IPX card, look at the ModX card, they aren't just IO cards. Like obviously they have the connectors on that I physically plug my cables in and out of, but they also add to the frame all this additional power. So part of what this card provides is it provides the ability to add, like multiviewers to the frame. So on this one card, I can license up to 3 unique multiviewers. If I zoom out and look at the rest of the frame, if I had this fully licensed, I can generate 4 completely unique multiviewers on this frame. So I think about this in terms of I can buy what I need today, but grow into what I might need going into the future. This frame has been covered. So, if I need, say 64 IO to route with, and I need 2 multi-viewers, like I only have to worry about that today. Right. Whereas in the past, I had to have some sort of an idea what that was going to be, what the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years was going to look like, and then size the router appropriately to accommodate those things, even if I was going to grow into it at a later point in time. It's a fully functional multi-viewer. I can generate like my own custom labels. I can generate my own custom layouts, right? So we have this layout editor tool that comes with the Ultrix frames, and we just access that with dashboard. We don't need any extra software to actually build our own layouts. I like to turn this grid on, right? So we can toggle this grid on and off, and we can change the grid size to fit our needs. And then it really is just a matter of like selecting the element that we'd like to use, and then like a position it wherever we want to. So I might want to build something along the lines of this. And we have these three different global pip sizes you can use. You kind of get the idea of what we can do here. And within these pips, I can add all these extra pip elements.
Ultimately, the Ultrix is a jack of all trades, master of all.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Jack of all trades, master of all.
I like that.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about the IO cards, right? One of the great things about the Ultrix platform is we can add the switchers into it as well, right? So there's this really cool card that we make called the Software Defined Production Engine, or the SDPE. I'm going to start with this Carbonite version, and we'll like work our way up. So we have, this becomes a standalone Carbonite in this mode, right? Where we're running the SDPE in Carbonite mode. It is a fully functional Carbonite switcher, and it can run all the way up to 2 MEs. It can be UHD. We can add things like frame syncs. We can add things like proc amps, and we can add the like Mosaic license. And this standalone switcher can sit within my router. It means I didn't have to cable it. That means I didn't have to figure out rack space for it. And it means it has access to all the IO of the router to bring into the 18 channels it works with, and then the additional like 4x4 we see here on like the right hand side of the card, give it a total of 22 and 2x22. And everything I'm used to in some like a Carbonite Ultra, that entire workflow, is baked into this card. So I can bring my touch drives if I have, like the older versions, which are called the Carbonite Blacks, right? Those surfaces work with this card just fine. I can, if the Carbonite doesn't quite fit my needs, I can run, in addition to this, I can run multiple Carbonites as well, right? So if I have a need for multiple switchers and I want to put them all within one frame,
all sharing the same resources,
frame resources, I can add more SDPEs that are running Carbonite, no problem. So here in this situation, theoretically, I have 3 unique Carbonite switchers in the same way as if this router had IO cards in place of these and they were physically cabled to Carbonite switchers in a next door rack. Like I have this in one package. And one of the concepts that we don't talk about all that often, but it's still like really relevant. If I'm thinking about switching out an older system for a newer system, and I'm kind of looking at the Ultrix as an option, since we can do this kind of system in a box where we have switching, routing, multi-viewers, like embedding, de-embedding, right? Like one of the harder things to do, especially for systems that are on air and in production constantly, is figuring out when am I going to actually have the time and the options to take that old system offline and put in a new system. And what are all the things I have to pay attention to? Is it, because if this install doesn't go very well, can I easily revert back to what it was? The Ultrix gives me the ability to completely set the system up, completely train on the system before I've even landed it in the rack, right? So like when I'm cutting everything over, I can have the entire system set up and ready to go. And the only thing I really do is pulling the ins and outs, plugging it into like the router, and then I'm off and ready to go.
So this would be really good if you, for instance, had, say, maybe our athletic university systems. If you have a broadcast for your ESPN or streaming, and then you want to control your scoreboards separately.
Sure.
You could actually do this off this frame with 2 Carbonite blades, sharing all the same resources, all the same inputs, but totally independent as far as the switching goes.
Without delving too far into how like switcher operation works, because that probably begets its own conversation. The crazy thing about this platform, is that when I'm looking at this, right, in this case, I have a Acuity and a Carbonite, well, 2 like Carbonites at the same time in this, just like this like little mock-up configuration we're working on. The cool thing about this is I can buy both the Acuity ME software licenses as well as the Carbonite software licenses, or even the HyperMax licenses, and then switch between those personalities like seamlessly. So if I am like a production house that needs, like in the morning, say like a big switcher, right? And I can have all these resources function as a single Acuity, a single 3ME Acuity. And then once I get out of that morning like production, you switch them all to their own individual Carbonites, go do their own individual things, and then recombine them again as one big switcher, right? So I can change what my hardware does just by changing the software on it without having to buy additional hardware. Whereas in the past, I had to have all those separate switchers, and some of the switchers might not even be in operation when the other one is, right? This one, I don't have to double up on my hardware. And on top of that, I don't have to double up on the size of my router. I don't have to double up on my multiverse, all that stuff. I can do all this self-contained in the router. There's no other platform in the world that can switch between complete different switcher products on the same piece of hardware just by switching the software out.
All in one box.
All in one box.
So, so again, the thing about the Ultrix is that it has to, not only as us as a system integrator, but for the customer too, you have to rethink the way that you are building out your infrastructure for today and for tomorrow. And the great thing about this is that no matter whether you are a small 3-camera facility with the basic production setup, but just want to have some room to grow and have that future compatibility, the FR1 is probably going to be a great option. You have it's affordable, all the way up to large scale. We just talked about networks and there's really no one that's excluded that could benefit from the Ultrix systems.
Right. As you said, we can start off as small as an FR1. The FR1 will top off at 36 by 36. And then this FR12 will top off at 288 by 288. But we can go even bigger with 2110.
2110 is that one thing that's going to require a little extra investment. And again, it's pretty expensive. It's pretty, a little more technical, some technical challenges and hurdles that you're going to have to incorporate with. But what about NDI? Does NDI work with just general black burst, or do we have to worry about any of that special timing for that?
So NDI generally kind of handles timing within its own self, right? So we may, sometimes you might have an NDI product that has a black burst into it, but generally speaking, the timing that the NDI senders and receivers worry about, they kind of do their own thing there to keep those two sides synchronized. Now, in the event that that is something that's going to be out of time for something like the Ultrix, right? If we bring that signal into the MODEX card and we want to send that, say, to a switcher, which is very timing sensitive, we can use the frame syncs that are within the Ultrix itself to make sure that signal that's coming off of the NDI path on these sub-modules are being referenced and synchronized to the black burst that's within the frame, which is also to the black burst of the switcher card itself. So even within the Ultrix, if we have these, where NDI kind of, doesn't really adhere to like black burst or PTP or, stuff that, SDI or 2110 would adhere to in the same way. But, when it arrives in the frame, we still have the tools and resources that we can use to rectify that signal to be something that everything else can use without potentially causing problems.
So aside from that, though, everything else will be really is not going to require any additional pieces and parts to be able to build basically a cohesive system. No. You got audio covered, you got video covered, you got your multi-viewers covered, you've got scaling output for LED covered. I mean, it really is pretty spectacular. And I've got to say, for those that are looking at different solutions, the thing that, again, and at TakeOne, we work with everybody, every manufacturer. I do have to brag on Ross a little bit because they have guys like Josh that are just brilliant and know all of these type of things. And so they're a great supplement when it comes to you trying to make a decision. Ross brings guys like this to come in and jump in on those conversations, to talk with you and to us to figure out exactly what it is and what your challenges might be, and to see if they have that right solution. And so I really appreciate you coming out to jump into this. And there's a lot more that I'm sure we're going to be talking about when it comes to not only this, but Ross has a few other things in their lineup as well. So I think we've got enough content to probably last the next 5 years. But I really appreciate you coming and talking about the Ultrix Carbonite, Josh. Always a pleasure, and I look forward to the next one. And for you, if you're looking for that solution, if you're especially in that beginning phase, it's just like, where do we go from here? Maybe you're starting out from a brand new system, a brand new room, and you're going to build it all from scratch. Often, We see people that are saying, hey, I've got some cameras and I've got this. How do I just sort of do a little bit of upgrades and maybe spend some capital money in the budget for this year? Well, those are the things that we would love to step in and help you through and walk you through that process. If you just give us a call at 1-877-81-TakeOne. You can also email us at mail@takeone.tv. We would love to talk to you, hear about what you have going on, and maybe bring in guys like Josh to see if they can give you a great solution at a great price. Appreciate you joining us. Give us a thumbs up and a like if you want to see more of this type of content, and we'll see you on the next one.